a long time ago, you had told me something that blew my mind, and I actually didn't believe you for a while, which was that at one point in time, the government outlawed the ownership of gold.
Oh,
And it like blew my mind because then I was like, wait a second, because then that brings up all these weird things. Like, if you are in possession of gold that you owned while it was illegal to own it, is it now illegal to own that gold?
yeah. That's a mind blower. That's what I was talking to my students just a couple weeks ago. I was like, I know, everybody thinks that the world is going to hell in a handbasket, and that the president is a tyrant, and executive power is out of control. But like, FDR literally robbed everyone of their gold. like, like let's not forget
So
that.
tell the story because I don't know it all that well. I just
Yeah.
remember being like, oh no, that really did happen.
Well, so this is a big story, but it's the election in 1932, and FDR wins. But back then, inauguration and like when they were sworn in was different. It wasn't. It was like 3 months staggered. I think they became president like March, and so there was like 6 or 7 months there where everyone knew, or there were several months there where everyone knew FDR was going to be president, but they didn't know what his position was on gold. And so this is 1932. Great Britain has gone off the gold standard. And it's like the first country, this is like a major problem. We had the gold standard before World War One, and then they all went off the gold standard since they couldn't, they didn't have enough money to back it all in gold. And then so England goes back on the gold standard, and they're able to keep it together for a little while. But the fact of the matter is that they actually went back to the standard at a parity, at a value for gold that was much too high, because that was before the war. Millions of people were dead, like assets, all the value of the economy blown up, right? It wasn't as valuable as it was before. So long story short, England goes off gold, and this is the biggest deal, right? And then the whole world is, in the throes of this Great Depression, and the only country in the world whose economy is expanding in 1933 is Great Britain, because they're the only one who's not on the gold standard, right? They're inflating and printing money, and their currency is getting weaker, so their exports are going up, and so exports are going up, there's more employment, booming. England has actually recovered from the Depression, right? And basically FDR's policy, it's on everybody's lips, is what will FDR do? Is he going to, save the gold standard, or will he trash it for his own benefit? Right, in order to lower his currency, increase his exports, increase his employment, his political prospects, right? And so he refuses to say what he'll do. He won't say what his plans are on the gold standard. So everyone starts getting scared, right? And a lot of British who, they're off the gold standard. A lot of money that's invested in New York, it starts to run, right? Because it thinks that the USA is going to devalue. And so you get all this gold, billions of dollars, flowing out through New York and draining out of America, out of the country, because it's anticipating this. And then so there's this big bank run, and this is a dramatic story, which is why I'm going to go into it. It's kind of interesting. There's this big, banking panic in Michigan. All the banks have to shut down in Michigan, and all the it's spreading to different states, and these governors are emergency, shutting down all their banks and having bank holidays, and they're on the phone with FDR, Herbert Hoover is like, FDR, you've got to make a joint statement with me that we're going to prop up the economy together. And FDR is like, screw you, guy. Like, if you're not willing to do it yourself and make the announcement yourself because you don't want to eat it, you don't want to be politically responsible for it, right? If you're not willing to do it yourself, I'll wait until you're not president, and then I'll take all the credit. And that's exactly what he did. And so he doesn't say what his position is on the gold standard. He becomes president, and then the first thing he does is he closes all the banks in the country. And while that's going on, that he passes the the Thomas Amendment, I think is what it's called, and that is what makes it illegal for all private citizens to own gold. Now, why did he do that, right? I started off with all the gold was flowing out of the system and back to England because it was fearing the devaluation. And so a lot of the gold, it wasn't all going to England. Some of it was going to mattresses, right? People, if you thought FDR was going to devalue the gold by 35%, you would take your gold and put it in your mattress too. And so FDR knew that, right? That was people's last veto, right? If you did not approve of what the financial system was doing as a citizen, you could take your gold out, right? That was your veto. And the less gold they had, the less loans they could make, damn it, right? That was how the system worked. And so he said, no more vetoes, right? The people aren't allowed to have gold anymore, right? And boom, okay, you're allowed to have some jewelry and you're allowed to have like rare old coins, but like any bullion, got bought by the government at the price of $20.67 an ounce, and then like 6 months later, he raises the price. Now, I mean, they did it in steps, because they were buying it on the open market. But at the end of all the buying on the open market, it gets to $35 an ounce. And so the difference was from $20.67 to $35. So they made $14 off of every ounce of gold in the country, right? Because they bought them all and then sold them back. And then where did they take that money? Because this is still with us today. And whenever I tell the story about the seizing of the gold, it has to end with the Exchange Stabilization Fund. It's called the ESF. You can look it up on Wikipedia. FDR took all that money that he made devaluing gold and he put it all in an account kept by the Treasury. And so he basically created a massive slush fund, right? That was, at the time was like $250 billion, $200 billion in today's money at the time. And that fund has been used by the Treasury to, say, bail out Mexico. It happened in the 90s. Bob Rubin, a big Wall Streeter, head trader at Goldman Sachs, became Treasury Secretary. And as soon as he was Treasury Secretary, he used that money to bail out Mexico with nobody's approval, right? Congress didn't pass some bill that said the United States was going to bail out Mexico. Bob Rubin just had this slush fund, right? And so this is the point. The point of the story is that isn't this interesting how this long thing from the ancient past, when FDR took everyone's gold, it's still affecting us today. Your power, your representation in what's going on in government, right, has been diminished from this movement. So interesting story.
Reid, you never disappoint in the storytelling department. Thanks for checking out this podcast short. If you're interested in conversations like this, you might want to join the Articulate Ventures Network. There, we're a patchwork of thinkers looking to explore different ideas, having our ideas respectfully challenged, and figuring out different ways of looking at the world. To find out more, go to network.articulate.ventures.